You're listening to the Precision Shooting Podcast, discussing all aspects of precision and long-range rifle shooting. This episode is brought to you by Projectile Warehouse. Find your perfect projectile. And now, over to your hosts.
Welcome to the Precision Shooting Podcast. This is episode number 8. My name is Rusty, and with me here tonight is Greg over there.
How you going?
And over here is Andrew. How you doing, Andrew?
Yeah, good, Rusty.
Excellent. Cool. So, we're back from Christmas and New Year's and all that sort of break. How do you guys go? Good time?
Yeah. I had a good time. Good family holiday, but shooting-wise, I didn't get a lot done,
Not so
unfortunately.
much?
Yeah, no, I got out once. I shot one round and I missed a rabbit at 100 metres, so, need to get a bit more practice.
I'm glad you're on the Precision Shooting Podcast then.
Yeah.
Mr. Rabbit 100.
Yeah.
Perfect. Nice. Andrew, yourself?
Only a little bit of shooting. Shot a few birds with the boys and did a little bit of spotlighting just the other night, which was good. So
Yeah, that was. I was out
Yeah.
with that. That was good fun.
it was a pretty good night. Good variety of game and good numbers. Keep it interesting.
Nice. I actually managed to do a little bit of shooting. I was away for a couple of days with a training course, and I managed to have a bit of a look at a Barrett getting shot. That was good fun. That was in 338, and been away a couple of times. That spotlighting and a few other sort of courses and times. Went away with Sean, as you guys would know from the last podcast. And we were down at Kai doing some filming, which was good, which finally got launched, which is the Southern Shooters Precision Rifle Invitational video that we ended up getting up, which we'll chuck a link in. Have you guys seen the video?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it was really good.
Good fun.
Yeah, some snappy drills in there.
Yeah. It might be heavily edited to make it look better, but anyway.
Don't give it away.
Well, it was just a bit of a teaser from what I'm gathering.
Yeah, it's only a minute long. There's only about 20 seconds of video in there, but that's all right. We've got more videos on the way, and when that competition actually happens, we'll video the whole lot and put it up. That should be good fun. Yeah, very good. Do you guys see that the Ruger Precision Rifle has been launched in Australia?
Yeah, interesting. Obviously we spoke briefly, I think, did we, or about the changes to the customs regulations?
I don't know if we did, but yeah.
Regarding importation of folding stocks, which should pave way for the Ruger to come in. So
yeah, which is good. That doesn't necessarily affect each individual state, because I know some states they can't. It's explicit they can't have them, but here in SA seems to be fine.
And all reports coming out of the states are they're performing well above their price point, I guess, in these sort of competitions we're talking about. So
yeah,
be interesting to get one on hand and have a look.
Yeah, so for those not aware, it came out. It's about $2,000, which realistically, for what it is pretty good. I mean, generally a stock that the type of stock that it's in is going to be around the $1,000 to $1,500 mark. So to get the whole thing done for $2,000 or thereabouts, I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, and at the brief look I've had, sort of on the online information, it's a good system. It's modular. The barrel system, it's quick change with the barrel locking nut. It's a really solid system. You can put a pre-fit barrel on there. As long as you've got a headspace gauge, anyone can fit it.
Right.
It's a really solid system.
Well, that's really good. Yeah, because I know a lot of accessories are interchangeable with the with the AR style, but the same things that the Precision Rifle products stocks take, and the 7615, if you use the appropriate sort of adjustments, they take all the same gear. So you plenty of furniture to deck it out in. Yeah,
and I mean the sort of, even with the actual barrels themselves, there's it's no big deal to get a Bartlein or a Krieger or a Schillen or any of the quality barrels and have them pre-fit, chambered and threaded, and you literally just with the tool to tighten your lock nut, good to go.
Yeah, right.
So easily upgradable. Yeah.
So they've come out in 6.5 Creed, 308 and 243. What would you guys choose out of those?
Well, after a bit of the kind of research and sort of discussions we've done, I think, unless you had a reason to go anything else, probably the 6.5 Creedmoor or the 243 would be probably the options as far as performance goes. I mean, if you had thousands of rounds of 308 and that's all you had access to, then that's what you'd go. But otherwise, I'd probably go the 6.5.
What about you, Greg? What do you reckon?
Yeah, look, I agree. You know, we've crunched some numbers and you know, basically, you know, there's some good projectiles in both 6 and 6.5 mil these days, especially around the burger stuff. So, you know, you'd probably lean towards that if you were going to use it in a tactical
This
style
precision
shooting
rifle.
scenario. You know, you might want to opt for something else if you had a different task, I guess. But yeah, good looking rifle.
Yeah, and just to complicate things, so that 243, it has a 7.7 inch twist rate. So
7.7. So you're very
it's very
okay.
fast.
Okay, so
Very
you
fast.
could run the heaviest of the heavy. Yeah.
You could run
Yeah.
105s or something
Yeah,
like that.
105s.
You could probably go close to the 115s maybe.
Did you say 7.7?
Yeah.
Yeah, because the
7.7
optimum
inch
for
per
the
one.
105s is 7.8.
Yeah.
So they're
very
obviously
close.
targeted a particular projectile weight.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, I scratched my head when I saw it was released in 243, and I thought, I wonder why they would do that. And then I thought, well, that's going to depend on barrel twist, and I looked at it, and it was that. The other thing is the 243, now I may have this right or wrong, 243 is in 26 inch, 6.5 Creed's in 24, and the 308's in 20 inch barrels.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My guess would be the 308 version would be, you know, maybe pushing towards law enforcement and that sort of thing, where they're probably limited to 308 maybe. Just
Sure.
a thought, I don't really know. But
Yeah.
Would the 308 with that length barrel hit the sort of muzzle velocities you need out to about 1200? Would it still?
Well, 308 in general is probably struggling to go to those kind of distances. Certainly, you wouldn't do it supersonic, but I mean, if it was a more of a law enforcement aimed, you know, sort of oriented system, then it would be plenty sufficient for that. So.
Yeah, it sounds that way.
Yeah, very good. Well, I have actually ordered one in 6.5 Creed. I know I was talking about doing a 6 mil, but perhaps if these barrels are pretty easy to change over, maybe I'll still go down that plan of a 6.
Or possibly have a shoot off with Greg's 6 mil.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, the 6
That'd be
by
fun.
47. Greg, how is that going, mate? Is it going pretty well?
Yeah, it's
We getting
going.
there?
It's slow. I just need a bit more money. But
Christmas will drain the bank accounts, won't it?
yeah, it has. It's done that very effectively.
Nice.
But I've got the barrel. It's a Bartland barrel, 1 in 8.
Yep.
31 inch. I'll cut that down. So that's sitting on the bench ready to go. I've just got to get a detachable bottom metal.
and you
That's
haven't
my next step.
you haven't decided on that?
No, I have very little idea when it comes to that particular add-on. So
All right.
I'm hoping we can talk about that sometime, and because
Well,
I know you
let's-
guys have a lot of experience there.
Let's do that next episode then.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of options and a lot of content for discussion there. So I think maybe we'll sort of look at doing a bit of research and hit that topic
Yeah. So
Yeah.
shortly.
And it'd be good. I think it'd be good to even touch on whether you go mag fed or whether you stay with, or whether you do internal. I think it'd be good to run that whole sort of gambit of options there. Talk about why you would go one way or the other.
yeah, that'd be really good. And then from there, once I've got a bottom metal and mag identified, I'll probably look to get the barrel done
Okay.
after that.
Yep.
Because I want to know what my overall length is. I've got
It's
to
going
work
to be
with.
for the
Yeah. So
right.
I'm getting close.
excellent. Cool. So have you got a time frame you planned for that to be done, or is that going to be dictated a bit?
Well, I've got the money. It's all about money. But,
And time.
yeah. But at the moment, I've got the money. Just got to make the decisions on that bottom metal, and I can sort of go ahead.
Has your Defiance action rocked up yet?
That was my what?
Your
Oh.
Defiance action?
Did you order it for me? Did you?
Yeah, I was just waiting for you to
Was
transfer
that
the
was
deposit.
that on your account? I hope.
Oh, well, one day,
Yeah,
mate.
one day, mate.
One day. Yeah, no, good. So you're not too far off.
Yeah, not too far off. Yeah. So
Brilliant.
just about getting next step will be gunsmith availability and who to pick there, and
Go from there.
good to go. Yeah.
Terrific. Now, we've been away. Well, Andrew, do you have a comment you wanted to make?
No, I'm sort of looking forward to getting into that sort of investigation on the bottom metal issue, Greg, because there's a a lot of stuff there we can talk about.
Yeah, I know when I start to investigate it on the net, you start to get a bit bombarded with what's out there, and so it'll be good to push that into an episode if we can.
Well, perhaps for next episode, anyone listening, if you use a bottom medal of some description that is available to suit a Remington-style action, let us know what you're using, the types of mags you're running, and how it's gone for you. Really interested in your feedback. I'm sure Greg would really appreciate any advice.
Sure would.
Yeah, for what he could be running on his setup. So hit us up on Facebook or on the website, or drop us an email, and we'll make sure we take on your feedback and put it into the next episode. That'd be really good. So while we've been away and Christmas has happened, the guys at Precision Rifle Blog have still been updating their website and have pretty much finished the series of what the pros use. Now, we've missed a bunch of them. I'm sure over the next few weeks we'll discuss various parts of them. But just to give you guys a quick idea, you got the barrels one there, Greg?
Yes, I have. Yeah, so the latest article they put out, well, it's not the latest, one of the last 3 they've put out was on barrels that were used within the Precision Rifle rifle series. And they basically looked at the top 100 competitors and analysed what barrels they were using and basically reported back on all that data. Now, I don't know, Andrew, you want to just go through some of the sort of top...
Just before we go into that one, I was going to just make mention of the other articles that talked about and see which one you guys reckon we perhaps will talk a bit more in depth about, which are more relevant and which we can sort of chat about. It's worthwhile knowing what's there, so if people are looking to find out the info, they can go to precisionrifleblog.com. But the other ones that they talked about...
Yeah, I think there's a couple of those ones on there, Sam, that there certainly would probably warrant a bit more of a discussion than sort of a brief chat.
So obviously the barrels one was the last one that we missed, which was after actions. The rifle chassis and stocks, that's probably worth talking about for a while. Not tonight, but in future episodes. That part of that will probably come into play next week when we do talk about the different bottom medals, because some of them are integral to that.
Yep, absolutely. I think that particular one would certainly warrant a bit more of a detailed discussion, because there's a lot of variety, and everyone will have the different opinion about that, so that'd be good.
And I know we talked about it I talked about it with Greg in another episode, but to get a bit more in depth with it would be really worthwhile. Then they talked about the best rifle triggers. Yeah,
I think the trigger one is probably not going to take up as much time. It's a bit more. I mean, triggers, they all do the same job. It's just a matter of what you personally like, I guess. So there's same as everything, I guess. But but yeah, I don't think there's going to be a massive discussion on that. And same with the next topic, which is they're listing suppressors and muzzle brakes. So obviously we only get half of that equation. Right. But again, a muzzle brake is, there's only so many variations on a muzzle brake. So I think that would warrant some discussion, but probably not a full episode maybe. So
yeah, cool. Actually, out of interest, Greg, are you intending to run a muzzle brake on your 6x47?
Yeah, I think I will.
Yeah,
I think I will, purely just from a follow-up point of view.
Sure.
And maintaining point of aim, like full
sight picture, pretty much.
Sight picture, yeah. To pick up fuller shot. I'm running first focal plane scope, so I don't want to miss that. And lose that benefit. So
cool. The one after that was shooting bags, which is all the different rests and bags and options.
Again, I think we could probably cover that as part of a bit of a conglomerate episode on some of the more
general sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because
they are actually.
Yeah, there's a lot of hybrid positions, or not non-traditional positions that can be addressed with those bags, and for me, I found that really interesting.
Yeah, I ended up that same day I was out with Sean from STS. We did a video on using a rear bag, which will go up on the Southern Shooters site in a couple of weeks, and that was, it was interesting talking about it, because there's a lot to it. Yeah, absolutely. And the other one that they'd done was the top bullets, brass, primers, and powder. That's that's probably about a couple of months worth of episodes.
Yeah, I think there's probably there's good discussion on all those individual items
Yeah.
in that list. So
So, yeah.
Personally, I haven't read that one, but we used that particular article from last year to do our projectile analysis, didn't we?
I think
So
you
this
use
is
some
the
of the data
updated
out
version. So it'd
out
be
of that.
interesting to see if there's anything worth recrunching.
yeah, it
Although
will
I've
be.
committed for my project, I'm happy
Yeah.
with that commitment. But it'd be interesting just to have a look at some of those projectiles and
Yeah, well,
powders.
absolutely. I mean, so if you are looking for that information, precisionrifleblog.com, if you want to go and read up and find some information. I think what we'll probably end up doing next week or next time we've committed to Greg for his for talking about bottom metals and feeding systems. But perhaps the one after we might talk a little bit about stocks, and there'll be one in there about triggers. Or there might be one in there where we talk about triggers and bags and a little bit of reloading info. And then we'll see where we go from there, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
If there's topics people want us to cover, let us know through, once again, those same mechanisms, Facebook and website and email, anything along those lines.
I think it's, as well, if anybody's got anything they'd sort of want us to maybe clarify a little more or go into more detail on that we've already covered, let us know for sure.
Absolutely, and if people got contributions, because we always love to hear what people think and their ideas, because we're only three blokes in a room. Yeah, so there's plenty of other people with experience that we'd love to hear from, which would be good. Speaking of three blokes in the room, we're hoping Dan arrives in the next episode. He's just not been able to make it. Schedules conflicts, which is part of the deal. But Dan is definitely still part of the team, and we can't wait for you guys to actually meet him. He was here for the first episode, which never made it to air through to some technical complications. So, but I'm sure he will be back soon.
Yeah, he's red hot keen, and he's got a perspective that I think will be pretty valuable to the podcast.
Because he probably sits in a slightly different area than the three of us, which he's going to certainly bring some ideas to it. So very good. Now I interrupted you before, Greg. I'm sorry. You were going to start talking a bit more about barrels, which is, I guess, the focus of tonight.
Yeah, so I'll just quickly introed the article in terms of what it's trying to do. So basically, it looks at the data of the top 100. It derives all that data into tables and basically lets people know, well, what are the top competitors using within their rifles. So to start off with, what they've covered is what are the most popular brands of barrels being used by the top 100. So the more accomplished competitors of the Precision Rifle Series in the US. The one that came up top was Bartlam Barrels.
Yep.
And
that's what you've ordered, isn't it?
That's what I ordered,
What
actually,
you've got.
based on this article.
Yeah,
So,
Is that the same reason you bought a Defiance action?
I wish I bought a Defiance, actually. Well, I was dreaming. No, I wasn't dreaming.
That'll be the next rifle build.
Next Christmas.
One day, when I'm single. So
You may become single if you buy the Defiance action.
that's
one can follow the other.
they're symbiont. Yeah, Bartlam Barrels. Fourth year in a row up top. So I went with that based on this article. So, I'm basically following the trend. Now, underneath that, probably the biggest mover and shaker, if you like, is the Hawk Hill Custom. They've
Can't say I'm familiar with that one.
No, I've never heard of them in my life. But they've got 13 in the top 50, which is a 350% increase. They've got 26% of the top 100 using their barrels. So I don't know. Their reputation is obviously lifting. People are starting to recognise the brand and starting to buy. So that's a big shifter.
Yeah, I'll certainly be keen to look into them. I would imagine they're a fairly new company, and obviously they're putting out a top grade product, and I think it takes a few successful guys to use their gear, and then obviously the demand really picks up. So yeah, very interested to have a look into them.
And hopefully their wait times don't escalate with popularity as we see.
Almost guaranteed they will, isn't it?
Yeah,
That's part of the deal.
Whether it goes berserk or not is.
And I guess like with unfortunately here in Australia we're limited, and being probably a smaller company, it's going to take a lot longer for them to become available here. But
Yeah, well,
hopefully,
actually, what would be really good, because we do have quite a large American audience. If any of the guys listening run those Hawk Hill custom,
Yeah, Hawk Hill Custom. Yeah.
yeah, if any of you guys are using it, we'd love to hear from you as to how it's going, and if you know more of the origins of the company, it'd be awesome to find out.
absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's well, they're obviously making a very good product.
Yeah,
If they weren't, they wouldn't be in there. So
absolutely. Who else we got there, Greg?
Yeah, next one down at 7%, so it's a significant drop down
Mm.
from 26% down to 7 on the third place of Benchmark. Now, I haven't heard of Benchmark. You guys heard of Benchmark?
yeah,
Yep.
I have. I
Yeah.
have heard of them. I've never used them. Never had a
Mhm.
look at one, but the reputation they got is very good. So, yeah. I mean, I don't think they're a particularly common barrel here, but where they're available, they're being used.
One of the 6mm barrels I was looking for that Creedmoor was Benchmark, but I just couldn't get it in the profiles after
Oh, right.
readily available, so I haven't ordered anything yet.
We'll talk about profiles shortly, actually.
All right.
So next one down, Proof Research at 6%. Yeah, again, I've not heard of a lot of these. Like, I go all the way down this list and I get to Krieger, and that's about the only one I've heard of.
Yeah, it's
But, you
proof.
guys might have heard of a few more.
Proof Research. I've heard of them again. Haven't used them, but as far as I'm aware, they're fairly well renowned for carbon wrapped barrels.
Yeah,
Oh,
they
you
used
mentioned
to
that
be
before,
different.
yeah.
So they're using a traditional steel barrel liner, which pretty much a very thin barrel, if you like, wrapped in a carbon fibre of some sort to keep the weight down and get your rigidity up. So it's an interesting. It's not not a real new concept. It has been around for a while, but they're doing it well if they've got it to the stage where their barrels are being used successfully. So
Yeah.
I had
Yep.
one carbon fibre wrapped barrel, and I don't know if it was because of the barrel. That was on a PWS, which is a 22, so it's a very different thing. But that just never shot for me.
yeah, I don't think that's probably so much to do with the
Might be-
carbon
might be
itself.
the
It's
action.
just
I don't know.
oh yeah, and the quality of the steel liner. Really, I mean,
Sure.
it's basically effectively a really thin conventional barrel wrapped in carbon. So if they haven't
Yep.
done that right, then nothing's going to work from there on out. But
Yeah,
Fair enough.
obviously, Proof Research have really got the system working. So
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
they're competitive, so
I have seen a few for sale here in Australia, which is interesting. So they're
Okay.
not a cheap barrel, but
no, I bet not.
they're sort of something that no one else is offering.
So the
Yeah.
the idea of the carbon is to keep the weight down. We still provide the rigidity of the barrel.
Yeah, pretty much, and they're renowned for cooling quickly. They transfer the
course.
heat
Yeah,
quickly, so
yep.
they give the rigidity, the lightweight, and the quick cooling. So
It'd be interesting to see what the harmonics do too in load testing compared to a more
Yeah.
traditional barrel.
it'd be a very very different
yeah.
behaviour. So yeah, I mean having not actually used one, it'd be interesting to get one on my hands and have a look at it. But
Yeah.
obviously they're working. They're doing a good job. I know there are plenty of other companies doing it, but obviously Proof are have got the
the edge,
accuracy
maybe.
down. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yep. And next down we got Brux. So
I've heard of Brux.
yeah, the Brux, they're
Yeah.
available in
Yeah.
Australia, are they?
I'm not sure if anybody's importing them currently, but I would imagine they would be able to be. Again, they've got a very good reputation. So, there'll be guys here using them for sure, but certainly within the States, they're certainly a growing name.
Yep. And then we dropped down a bit to 3% for Broughton barrels, and then also at 3% Hart barrels. So, have you guys had any experience with those barrels, or are they available in Australia?
I know Hart is. Longshot Shooting Supplies in Queensland do Hart, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, and I think Broughton have been brought in sort of on a more individual basis.
Okay.
I did a bit of research, and as far as I'm aware, Broughton barrels are a button rifle barrel, which is
Mhm.
we'll get into this a little bit later, but
Yep.
and Hart are too. And what I did notice in a bit of research I did is Hart barrels feature significantly more prominently in bench rest, the short range bench rest. They're really quite common in that.
Okay. Yep.
And it's sort of just a little bit of thing I noticed that the equipment being used by those guys is somewhat different from the PRS guys, but they're all obviously requiring maximum accuracy. So,
And then well down the list at 2%, again a bit of a surprise, but it was there last year, is Krieger. So Krieger's sort of dropping away. I don't know whether that's just to do. We know they're a good performing barrel. It's probably more to do with availability, you think?
Yeah, maybe, because they've got quite long lead times on them.
Yeah, I would imagine that's probably a fairly big part to do with it.
Yeah, because if these guys are practicing a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, I think a lot of these PRS competitors, they will burn through barrels quickly.
Quicker than they can get them in.
Yeah, probably. If they've got to wait 6 or 9 or 10 months for a barrel, then it's probably too long.
Is that another factor in looking at this data, is that perhaps a number of these guys are sponsored with things like barrels? Is that going to skew these numbers as to what's actually... I mean, obviously, if they're going to be using them, they're probably good. But if they're going to be getting them for a discounted rate or free or anything like that, does that skew our numbers a little bit?
It might.
Could well do.
Yeah.
It's a valid point.
I don't know. I'm speculating.
I would sort of... you mentioned there that they're probably good. I would say anything in this list is top grade.
Sure, yep.
I think there's a lot of things that it's probably, the top level competitors could be using any number of these products and they would still be getting those results. So I think it's a bit of it comes down to availability and obviously, personal choice. They might have a relationship with that company, but yeah, it's without knowing that information, it's a bit hard to say that.
Of course, absolutely. And perhaps some of these companies have targeted the precision rifle type market more. You said that Hart are quite popular, and I know Krieger in Australia are very popular with the bench rest type series. And do they go after a particular market more so and spend their time after that?
So I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. I mean, some of these, the more unknown manufacturers, the precision rifle series is pretty big
and pretty new.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the volume of potential customers in particularly the US. I mean, you'd be crazy not to target that market. And so they got a product that's good, and why wouldn't you go after it? And so there may well be commercial arrangements, but they're obviously a good product.
Yeah,
no
doubt.
Some of the twist rates that they're putting out now too are right on the optimum for 105 grain and right on the optimum for 140 grain and 6.5. So they're starting to really target their twist rates on those optimums.
Well, they're targeting, I think, the projectiles that are out now. We spoke about that earlier in an earlier episode about your projectile selection. These projectiles are available, so if you can bring out a barrel that will be absolutely optimal for them, you're more likely to get your business of the end user. So, yeah.
Yeah, but it's funny because in bench rest they run 6 mils commonly as well, but they run a very different twist rate because they're running a very different projectile. So obviously the guys are going to be marketing for the different types of
task,
very different
task specific. Yeah.
So that doesn't necessarily mean that they're better or worse. They're certainly obviously all very good quality barrels. So you mentioned before, Andrew, there's 2 or probably actually 3 types of different manufacturing processes for the barrels. I know we've mentioned this before in podcasts, but probably not a bad topic to cover again.
Yeah, I guess the 2 main types of barrel that we're going to find, I guess, will be cut rifled and button rifled. Mm-hmm. The main difference is button rifled use a carbide, usually a carbide button. It's either pushed or pulled through the barrel to cut or to form the rifling.
Yep.
Whereas cut rifled uses a cutting head which actually cuts each groove at a time, and it only take very, very small cuts. So 2 different manufacturing methods to produce a barrel. And the majority, from what I've looked at the list on the PRS equipment, the majority of them are cut rifled.
Right.
But there are some button rifled in there. So I think that it's one of those sort of pieces of equipment that if it's made well, it doesn't really matter.
So there's not a huge advantage. Is cut rifling easier? Is that why we see more people go towards that? Or more manufacturers go towards that?
Probably not, actually. It's probably a harder process. It's a longer process to produce the barrel. It's certainly more intensive as far as, they take many, many passes through a cutting tool to produce that barrel.
Okay.
I guess some of the advantages of that system are they can basically alter the pitch or the rifling to suit whatever they want. It's not set by a tool. They can, if they want to make a 1 in 8.25 twist, they can do that. or if they want to make,
Yep.
it's a lot more variable
Whereas the button, that's decided by the tool head.
by the button itself. Yeah, and it's reputed to be a longer lasting like a longer barrel life when you're cut rifling.
Yes.
I'm not really sure why that is, but certainly Krieger barrels are renowned for being a long life barrel.
And they're a cut rifle?
Yes, they are, yeah. So I haven't heard it explain why that would be the case, but it seems to be, but I haven't noticed
Certainly
it personally.
Interesting to find out if that's the case. So it's not 50-50 cut and button, it seems to be more cut?
It seems to be more cut, but I would think that's probably due to the fact that people can get the twist rates they want with a cut rifled barrel.
Yeah, easier.
And I think a lot of the button rifled manufacturers don't necessarily offer that real optimal twist rate. So, if you had a barrel that was, or a projectile that you were going to run and you needed a 1 in 7.75, you can get that.
Yeah,
with a cut rifled barrel.
Easily.
Certainly a lot easier than a button rifled system, yeah.
Yeah, very good. And the third option is the hammer forged barrel, which is interesting enough what the Ruger precision rifle is going to be running. Now they're generally done that way because it's cheaper or quicker.
Both, it's a quicker manufacturing method. So obviously it's faster, it's cheaper to do.
Yep.
You don't normally see hammer forged barrels in your match grade barrels.
No, not normally.
They normally produce a very smooth barrel. So they're not going to foul a lot, but I think dimensional accuracy is probably not as good as some of the other methods. However, as you said, Ruger have used it on their precision rifle, and results are good so far.
Well, I guess that they've had to keep the price down some way, haven't they? So that's certainly an aspect of it. But if the results are doing well, they're not seeing those really high end top precision results from them, but they're certainly getting the job done.
Well, that's right. I mean, I sort of read some reviews where guys are getting around the half MOA mark out of these factory guns. Now, I think we touched on it on a previous podcast about the difference between a quarter MOA gun and a half MOA gun. In practical terms, it's not a huge factor.
There's other factors that are way more important.
Absolutely. So, I mean, there are other companies that do it. Lithgow, I believe, are using that method. Yeah,
I reckon on the new, they have on their rimfires, and they traditionally have, and so I expect them to be using that on their centerfires. And I'd be interested to see how those Lithgows go, and particularly in this longer range market, because they're an excellent gun. They certainly seem to be. 22s perform very well.
Yeah, well, I would imagine the centerfires should do well too. And I mean, there's other companies that do it as well. Like Steyr is a company that I believe hammer forges all their barrels, and some of their rifles are really top grade. So
yeah, they do work very well. Yeah, shoot very well. So obviously, cutting and button is the primary sort of preferred options, but
it seems to be that the majority of barrel manufacturers that sell barrels as component items
do it that way.
I mean, I don't think a lot, but a number of manufacturers that manufacture firearms do it, but they don't offer their barrels as component items for sale. So,
yeah, okay. And your experience, I guess we'll see, but I've got button and cut barrels, and I honestly couldn't really tell the difference in terms of how they performed. I wouldn't know if I didn't know already.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that to say determine barrel life one over the other, you'd need to perform a really controlled test. There's so many other factors, the different powders, different primers, how hot you're running your loads, determines your barrel life more than
expensive. I mean, the only person who could afford that test like that's probably Greg, really.
Yeah, easily.
So you're going to give us the results next week, Greg?
Cha-ching. Yep.
So we've that's the different types of manufacturing, and we've talked a reasonable about twist rates. I know we covered a fair bit of that in another episode. The other one you've got there, Greg, is the profiles.
Yeah. So Rusty, the other part of the article is that they've got all the profiles from the top 100 of the actual profile of the barrels and listed them in popularity order, basically, and also overlaid what positions they finished in. So it's pretty interesting. The top three predominant profiles are Heavy Palmer, Remington Varmint, and Medium Palmer. what tends to sort of dominate the competition. And yeah, I don't know, Andrew, whether you've had experience with the heavy Palmer profile and what you think might be the reasoning behind them leaning towards Palmer over a more probably traditional varmint.
Well, I think there's probably a number of reasons. That the Palmer contours generally have a bit more weight, a bit more sort of mass around the chamber end than a standard Rem varmint, for example. So obviously it's going to heat up slower than the lighter contoured Remington varmint. Having said that, to me, what was, I guess, interesting from these results is there wasn't a lot of really heavy barrels in there, which in comparison to, say, F class, where they do have weight limits, but they're some reasonably high weight limits, and bench rest shooting where they want to have as much weight as they can in the barrel, the PRS competitors are generally using a lot lighter contours. They've got to move with their guns, so I think the actual contours that are being used is probably not a massively influential factor.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to see that it's not limited to, but the majority of competitors are using a fairly similar weight barrel.
Yeah, and although, like as you say, there's probably not going to influence accuracy all that much, but it may influence the balance of the gun in terms of having weight further rearward towards the action, balance their rifle for easier manipulation as they change positions and all this sort of thing. Do you think that comes into play with it?
Probably more so for a PRS competitor than a bench rest or an F class or some of the other traditional target shooting disciplines. I think if the actual balance of your rifle is not a real concern, say for an F class shooter who will have a front and rear rest, so they're not actually balancing the rifle at all, it's not really a concern for them. They'll have as much weight as they can in the barrel, which would mean quite a forward heavy rifle. Whereas for this more sort of dynamic form of shooting, it's not going to be practical. If you're going to be in an uncomfortable, unbalanced position, you want as much, probably I would say, over the sort of the front of the receiver is where you want the balance point. Now, if you've got a really heavy profile barrel, it's going to put you really front heavy. So yeah, that would be a big concern for these guys, I think.
There's definitely no truck axles in this profile list, that's for sure.
No, well, that's the nature of the sport, isn't it? Is you're dynamic, you're moving between positions. You need a gun that is you need it to be weighty and heavy for to get the best performance out of the cartridges that you can. But you also need to be able to climb through tubes or get into barricades or be moving between shots even. And you want that compromise, and that's interesting to see all those barrel profiles you mentioned are that compromise, aren't they?
That's it, and that's what we've talked about a lot in the past podcast, is about understanding your end use. How you're going to apply. When you have your project and when you build a project rifle, that you understand the task you're going to use it for and make decisions around that task.
Yeah, the application's everything.
See, I think a lot of these. The PRS style competitions, they're not firing really long strings of shots, so they don't need a hugely weighty barrel to sort of keep the thermal stability of a big heavy barrel. Then that's not the one of the main prerequisites and concerns, I guess, that some other disciplines have. So it's a compromise of having a rifle that's manoeuvrable and yet having a barrel that's stable enough and rigid enough to give it the accuracy level they want.
Yeah, it's interesting. As far as I'm aware, and you guys are happy to correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's a weight limit on rifles in the PRS. I certainly know the comp we're putting together with Southern Shooters, there's not going to be any weight limits. It's going to be limited by your own decision of what can you be bothered to lug around, because you're going to be running with it, moving with it, and manipulating position several times. Whereas a no bench class, F class, bench rest, F class, that sort of stuff, there is weight limits.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any weight limit for the PRS competition. I think it's pretty much you carry it.
Yeah.
If you can carry it, you got to carry everything with you. So.
That'll fit. I mean, you're not going for a 20k walk, but you're certainly moving, and you don't want it to hinder you, the weight of the gun.
I think that'll be interesting, with the Southern Shooters Invitational, as people show up each year and they experience the scenarios, how their gear will develop over the years. And I know we've talked offline about you're going to collect data in a similar way to the PRS series, and
Yeah, we may as well.
and it will be interesting as time unfolds.
Yeah, and you've seen that in the PRS. I mean, originally, I guess a lot of guys start out with 30 cals and perhaps heavier guns and realise that that's not perhaps ideal. And I'm seeing what guys are going to be bringing to this comp, and I'm seeing the same sort of thing. Guys are running 300 Win Mags and bigger stuff, and perhaps thinking about it, maybe it's not perfect for it. It'll work, no doubt, but it's perhaps not perfect.
But I think it's an evolutionary sort of thing with a particular type of competition. That you look for bench rest shooting, for example, short range bench rest shooting. It's been around for a long time, and the equipment and the cartridges are very much almost identical what people use.
But they've changed so much over the years as well.
They have, but they've gotten to the stage where the rifle configurations are ideal for that style of competition now.
Yep.
I think the PRS in the United States has rapidly evolved to the degree where now we've got very different configurations than we did 5 years ago, for example.
Very much.
And I think we will probably see that repeat itself here.
Well, now, when we talked about the cartridges used, they were talking 6 or 6.5, and that was really the only things you talked about. Whereas go back a number of years, it was not that situation.
Well, and more. I think it'll be quite telling in that a lot of the courses which Southern shooters have run in long range shooting vastly outnumber anything of the 30 cals. 308, 300 Win Mag seems to be the ones that really.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, we're slightly off topic of barrel profiles, but I think you're right. But I also think that a lot of people, when they start their longer range and precision rifle shooting stuff, they've often got a 308 or a 300 Win Mag. They're great cartridges to start on. And then I guess as you get to know it better, you decide on your application more. And then you head down towards your application, because a lot of these guys will be coming from a hunting background, where a 30 cal is actually really good because of what it will do downrange.
Terminal performance, yep.
You got anything left in that article there, Greg, that we can...
look, one thing we probably should touch on before we leave this one alone is rifle barrel lengths. Now, predominantly, the predominant rifle barrel length is 26 inch that was used in the PRS series, and that seems to be the optimum that has come out. But there are barrel lengths ranging from 20 inch all the way through to 28 inch that all placed quite well.
Yep.
So,
is there a breakdown there of which cartridges use which barrel length?
Yes,
there is.
They go to that length, which is interesting.
That's useful.
They break down those predominant calibers of the 6.5 Creedmoor, the 6 and 6.5 by 47, 260, 6 XC, the 6 mil dasher, 9 mil.
9 mil. That's an interesting choice.
That's an impressive shooting. 6 mil Super LR, and then it breaks down to what lengths we use within those calibers. So that's even interesting in itself. There's a bit of a spread between each caliber. Like let's just look at 6.5 by 47.
Yep.
Predominantly, it was 26 inch used, but there was also 27 inch, so longer, and there was also barrels right down to 22 inch. So it's just interesting. It makes me think. What's the rationale behind each of these barrel length choices in terms of are they hitting their muzzle velocities that they're looking for and all those sorts of things?
I think, Greg, it's interesting to see. I mean, with certain calibers, bore sizes and cartridge sizes, there's a barrel length that will give you optimal performance. I mean, you can run a shorter barrel and get very good accuracy, but you will lose out a little bit of velocity. So I think some of these cartridges now, the competitors have, perfected the system enough now. They know, to get optimal performance, you can go to evidently a 26-inch barrel, and you will get more. If you went to a 30-inch barrel, you'll get a little bit more, but it's always a give and take. Yeah, you lose out in manoeuvrability and rigidity. So
weight.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's, again, a good shooter, a really good shooter, will still shoot well with a shorter barrel, but a little bit less velocity, so they get not as good ballistics, and so they've got to be a bit more spot on with their wind and everything like that. So yeah, it's obviously these guys have found that barrel length is for these particular cartridges. If you were to go with something a lot bigger capacity, for example, that would change, but it's working.
Yep. So yeah, it's just interesting how they've broken that down by caliber, just to look at those muzzle velocity. There's those trade-offs that they're looking at, and then in the article, the only other item that they cover off is just what the top shooter for the whole series actually shot, and it was a 26-inch barrel. It was a Hawk Hill custom barrel in a Remington Varmint in 6x47. It just happens to be a lot of the choices I made, except for I got a Bartlein. But yeah. So the top shooter. That's what he was using.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, that's interesting to know, but only a representation of what happened, isn't it?
Probably all comes down to more his skill level than
whether he chose this barrel or that barrel.
Yep.
I think the shooter's individual ability is probably by far and away the biggest factor.
Yeah, and a lot of these guys are using gear that's all very, very similar. So it comes down to that, and probably a lot of practice. Yeah, definitely.
Lots.
Very good. Well, hopefully we've covered off on a couple of questions regarding barrels, and I'm sure there's plenty more. And it'd be good to speak to someone one day on one of our interviews about a barrel manufacturer and that sort of thing. You guys got any other thoughts to share?
Probably not. I mean, I think we've covered the sort of the basics of it. I mean, there's a lot more we can go into on types of rifling and things like that, but that's probably more for another discussion.
Sure.
Because I don't believe the Precision Rifle blog goes into types of rifling. It just lists barrel manufacturers and twist rates and things like that.
Yep.
So, yeah, there's a lot. When we talk about barrels, there's a really lot we can talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but I know you said before, Andrew, I don't remember if it was during the recording or not, but you talked about all these barrels realistically are probably all on the same or in a similar level, that if one guy had one barrel and the other guy had the other barrel, that's not necessarily going to be the absolute deciding factor.
No, not at all. I mean, you could take 10 different barrel manufacturers, all with a barrel, a barrel capable of quarter minute or less accuracy, and you put that into the hands of 10 shooters of varying levels of ability, and you'll get the results that indicate their ability, not the barrel's ability. So,
yeah, I think that's probably very true. Excellent. Well, obviously, as we talked, in a couple of weeks, we're going to talk about your bottom medal. So anyone listening, please let us know about that. We have a few other interesting interviews coming up. So hopefully you've enjoyed our interview series, and we'll continue with that with guys within the industry and keep expanding that as we go along. Thanks to all the people listening along, and thank you for your feedback. And we'll look forward to doing more of these. It's been good fun. Thanks for coming in, guys.
No problem at all.
No worries.
And we'll catch you guys next time.
Thanks for listening to the Precision Shooting Podcast. To continue the discussion, check out our Facebook page. And for more information, head to our website, www.precisionshootingpodcast.com.au. This episode was brought to you by Projectile Warehouse. Find your perfect projectile.